Warning, the following may contain spoilers for the Rings of Power. The Rings of Power seemingly made a huge retcon to J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings Silmaril and Mithril lore, but it's possible it's all just a part of Sauron's plan. Gil-galad and Celebrimbor are both convinced Durin's Mithril is the product of an old legend about an elf and a Balrog fighting for a Silmaril, and that it holds the key to restoring the elves' power in Middle-earth. While it doesn't seem to outright contradict anything Tolkien ever wrote about Mithril, the story is still a massive addition to Lord of the Rings canon and creates a number of other huge unresolved questions about the elves, the Silmarils, Mithril, and more. On its face, it seems like a pretty straightforward MacGuffin as the show approaches the end of its first season. However, another reading of the story could reveal Sauron's master plan for taking over Middle-earth. Gil-galad's Mithril origin story probably isn't true. In Episode 5, Partings, the Elven High King Gil-galad confronts Elrond about the Song of the Roots of Hydaellir, which Elrond describes as an obscure legend regarded by most to be apocryphal. In the legend, an elven warrior and a Balrog fight over a tree believed to contain the last of the lost Silmarils, their duel resulting in their powers of light and evil intermingling as the tree is struck by lightning, sending the power deep into the mountain where it created a power as pure and light as good, as strong and unyielding as evil. If Elrond's incredulous initial reaction isn't telling, the story itself seems to resemble a comic book origin story more than any of the other stories we've seen in the Rings of Power. Gil-galad and Celebrimbor are concerned over the fading light of the Eldar, and their desperation to find a solution, and their belief that bathing every elf in the light of Mithril will return the elves to their glory may be a little more willing to entertain legends like the Song of the Roots of Hydaellir than Elrond is, but the story and the Mithril solution are both a little too contrived and convenient to be accepted as fact just yet. Sauron eventually tricks Celebrimbor into making the Rings of Power. His presence has been felt throughout the first season of the Rings of Power, but Sauron's identity still hasn't been revealed. While we don't know who Sauron is in the show, we do have a good idea of his motivations thanks to Tolkien's writing. Of the many names given to Sauron, the Deceiver is one of the more popular because of his many deceptions during his rise to power, the biggest of which was tricking Celebrimbor and his elven smiths into crafting the Rings of Power, other than the One Ring, which Sauron himself made. The Silmarillion specifies that Sauron comes to Celebrimbor under the name Annatar, meaning Lord of Gifts, towards the end of the Second Age, which is when the Rings of Power show takes place. Celebrimbor is working with the dwarves of Khazad-dûm, as arranged by Elrond in the Rings of Power, and Annatar teaches the elves the craft of ring-making, without telling them the rings will all be bound to a master ring he wrought in secret. Amazon doesn't have the rights to the Silmarillion, so the events in the show may not play out exactly the same way, but Gil-galad's faith in the Song of the Roots of Hydaellir and Mithril as the salvation of the elves could be a key element of Sauron's deception. How the elves' Mithril plan could be one of Sauron's most important deceptions since the beginning of the Rings of Power. Gil-galad and Celebrimbor have been hiding the full truth from Elrond. Elrond was brought in due to his connection with the dwarves, not just so he could help forge an alliance in building Celebrimbor's towers and furnaces, but also arrange access to the dwarves' Mithril. Since Gil-galad and Celebrimbor are keeping Elrond in the dark on the complete nature of their plan, it wouldn't be a huge surprise to learn Sauron already approached them as Annatar, planting the idea of working with the dwarves to build great furnaces to craft something of true power. As Halbrand tells Galadriel in Episode 4, The Great Wave, you do well to identify what it is that your opponent most fears, and give them a means of mastering it so you can master them. After elves have existed undying for many millennia, it would make sense that the fading the light of the Eldar would be a terrifying mystery to them, giving Sauron the Deceiver the perfect tool. Weaponizing Gil-galad's hope, Sauron, as Anatar, could have told the High King to build the furnaces that would eventually be necessary to craft the Rings of Power under the guise of using them to craft artifacts from the Mithril to bathe the elves in the light of the Valar once more. Conveniently, the at least 2 of the 3 elven rings of power eventually crafted by Celebrimbor himself also have powers of preservation, which is how Galadriel maintains the glory of Lothlorien and the elves that live there through the end of the Third Age. Sauron taught the elves how to craft rings of power, so regardless of the outcome of the Mithril plot, Sauron could weaponize that same hope to get the elves to make the rings of power. In addition to providing the means to make the Rings of Power, which are unknowingly slaves to Sauron's One Ring, this plot would create tension between elves and dwarves, who would be an otherwise powerful alliance against Sauron's rise to power. The fact that the forges of Eregion are being built at the same time as Adar is transforming the Southlands into what is later known as Mordor, including possibly turning Mount Doom into an active volcano, which is necessary for Sauron's forging of the One Ring. With only 2 episodes remaining in the Rings of Power's first season, and Sauron yet to be unmasked, it only makes sense for the machinations driving the rest of the plot forward are his doing. The elves are desperate for hope of their preservation, and Sauron's deceptions can easily twist that hope to his own purposes. Whether or not this aspect of the plot reveals itself in Season 1 or takes even longer to develop remains to be seen, but the show is going to get 5 seasons in total, so there's plenty of time for Sauron's full plan to come into view. For now, though, both in the Southlands as well as Eregion, men, elves, and dwarves alike are all paving the path to Sauron's eventual domination.